I loved watching it, but I never thought I would end up working in sport. And I didn't spend my initial career in sport, so I qualified as a lawyer. I worked in law for about the first 10 years, and then I went to work for the government doing various things in the construction industry and the environmental sector. And I guess if I had a specialism, it was about changing people's behaviour. And I think that's what led me to Sport England. And that was a big professional lesson too, that you don't have to be expert in something to transfer the skills you've got over to it. In 2007 I became Chief Executive of Sport England, the first woman to do the job. The first time they'd appointed anybody from completely outside sport. It was a really brave thing to do, and I did that job for 12 years nearly in the end. One of the great things about running something like Sport England is you get to see and meet some amazing people, and you have some incredible experiences. So the most amazing experience was the Paralympic Games, and I just felt so proud to be part of a sporting system that produced a Paralympics that could fill a stadium and excite people to that level. This Girl Can started actually also in the Paralympics because Maria Miller had just become Secretary of State in between the Olympics and the Paralympics. The first time I met her was sitting on a bench watching visually impaired football at the Paralympics, and she said to me, I really want to do something about women's sport and I want to do something about participation rates. And what came to me, and I guess, I've been working in sport by then for 5 years, the statistics were so clear and so constant that we had almost forgotten that the pink line of women's participation was always below the blue line. And we hadn't really looked at the gap, we just looked at the trend in the line. And when I looked at it and realised that that gap was 1.8 million women, I thought, she's right. And if we just do what we've always done, this is not going to change. The advertising agency that won the pitch came back and said, we've got all these barriers, all this stuff, but the strongest single message is there's something here about fear of judgment. That women feel judged when they play sport. They feel judged for how they look, for what they wear, for how good they are, or for how rubbish they are. That's what we need to do. And then we just stuck to that principle. And it was all about talking about fear of judgment and tackling it. And the way we chose to tackle it was by showing real women, which sounds daft because obviously all women are real women, but not actresses, not models, not sports stars, but just people that literally we found running in the street or working out in the gym or playing on the netball courts and said, we want to film you. And it was a huge risk, but it paid off unbelievably because women saw themselves. And it started a different kind of conversation. This Girl Can has definitely got a wider application. And that was one of the most exciting things about it, that it became a bit of a mantra for empowerment of women in lots of areas. And there's absolutely no doubt that that principle about fear of judgment applies to women in the professional context and definitely in sports administration. So there is really good academic evidence that shows that when a man looks at a job description, if he can do around 60% of it, he will apply for it. If a woman looks at it, if she can't do over 90%, she won't. You have to get over that dialogue in your head that says, am I really good enough to do this? Do I belong here? Well, the This Girl Can philosophy is, firstly, everybody feels like that, and secondly, yes, you do. Yes, you can, and yes, you do. So I think taking that thinking and putting it into a professional context and putting it into sports administration, it would definitely work if somebody was brave enough to do it. But you've got to be completely authentic and you've got to show it like it really is. This isn't something you can airbrush. I do think gender equality is important. I've spent a lot of my professional career being the only woman in the room, and you do feel it when you're in a minority. Gender equality is getting a lot better in sport. We've had the announcement at the Commonwealth Games, for example, in Birmingham. There will be more medals for women than there were for men. We have got major newspapers in the UK now having whole supplements every day about women's sport. I can remember when you needed a magnifying glass to find the pieces on women's sport in your average UK newspaper. So we're not there yet, but definitely sport as a whole is taking women's sport much more seriously. Tennis is in an interesting position because in many ways tennis has had equality for a long time, I mean, tennis has had tournaments in the Grand Slams that showcase both women's and the men's game equally. It's had equal prize money, it's had some of the best female role models sport has ever had, and some of the highest earning, and that matters because that brings commercial power and it brings real clout and coverage. And if you were to ask me outside the tennis sphere who I admire most, Serena Williams and Billie Jean King would be right at the top of that list. So tennis has a flying start, but it has to then translate that into grassroots opportunities, into officiating, into the leadership roles, into governance. There I think it has some work to do because it's got a great pool to draw from. It needs to draw from it, which is why this campaign is so important.